Yeah, good morning, every one of you. Today we are going to see.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. Okay, today we are going to see this food preservation. So, food preservation is mainly used to increase the shelf life. So, shelf life is nothing but the post harvesting, whatever the crop is there. So, that crop has to reach to the end user. So, how much time that can be stored, that particular harvest can be stored until it reaches to the end consumer or end customer. So, that shelf life can be increased by just adopting some food preservation techniques. So what are these techniques which are there for food preservation? So the first one among is the freezing. So freezing, obviously we know that in our household purposes also we use refrigerators. So in order to preserve our food for the long time, at least 2 or 3 days. Then this freezing is also having an industrial applicability like cold storages, like freeze drying, everything will be there. So industrial application, when we adopt this refrigeration cycles, it is called as a freeze drying or a cold storage for the large scale storage of these foods. Then drying, the normal drying. So normal drying, what happens in the normal drying, the texture of food will be very much destroyed, nutritional values will be destroyed because heat has been produced. But when you combine this freezing plus drying, which is called as a freeze drying, so that will just retain whatever the nutritional value, whatever the texture is there, it will be retained, except that it will remove the water content in some using some sublimation technique or passivation technique. So using that one, the freeze drying will be very much advantageous compared to the normal heat drying. Then irradiation. So irradiation is nothing but the radiation is nothing but the source of energy which is coming from some source is called as a radiation. But this source, whatever the radiation source which is falling on something and it is changing something inside that physical body is called as a irradiation. So this irradiation is also has a many applicability in industrial scales, food processing industries, because it has many advantages. We will discuss this one. Then next possibility is to add additives. Okay, some chemical additives like something flavoring additives or something will be added. Nutrition supplement, flavoring enhancer, antioxidant, preservatives, emulsifiers, regulators. So that will be known as D100 or D101, DS22 or S101. Like this, something you can be observed in the backside of the packing, whatever the packaged food which you are consuming, so that it will be listed in a code words, that preservatives. So it's a trade name, it's their trade name. So using this following four types of methods, we can preserve our food. One is a freezing, then drying, and when you combine this freezing plus drying, which is called as a freeze drying, the next one is the irradiation and additives. Following these four ways, we can preserve our food. Then first one we will see the cold storage. So how does it works? The freezing mechanism on a large scale, it works. So cold storage has to be designed in order to prevent the food from spoilage. Okay, by just offering them to have a cold environment throughout the cold storage, it will offer a cold environment for that particular target food. So how can it offer? So there is some engineering aspects which are there inside this cold storage, which we needs to adopt. Otherwise, this cold storage will not supply a whatever the environment which the particular target food has to be meant for. So the first one among those is a thickness of insulation on the wall. So walls are made, so concrete walls will be made. So concrete walls is ultimately, if you see the heat transfer from the concrete wall is somewhat higher. In order to lower that heat transfer to the surrounding environment, we have to provide the insulation, or we have to provide some false ceiling. In our household purposes also, we will have a false ceiling. So false ceiling is nothing but an insulating material. That insulating material we have to provide. So this thickness, how much thickness we have to provide, so it will depend on the whatever the cold environment which is required inside this storage, cold storage. So if you see, this is 3D view of this cold storage. Inside this cabin, whatever the coldness which is required, whatever the environment which is required inside that one, depending on that one, we have to make the insulation thickness, that wall thickness should be, we have to design that one. Greater insulations are required for the very deep freezing, like 0 degree centigrades or below 0 degree centigrades, that will be required a greater insulation in order to lower the chances of heat conduction or convection from inside to outside, so that our refrigeration cycle will be functioning as efficient as possible. Then the next parameter in the design is the temperature. So the temperature, if you see the temperature, if you are going below 100 degree, below this 0 degree centigrades, what happens inside this cold storage means some of the moisture will be condensed and it will be just forming a ice around the doors. So around the doors or some flooring, what happens? It will be forming some ice. So when there ice is there, the when we are going inside the cold storage and coming from the cold storage, what happens? These ice blocks will be there. So there is a possibility that this door will not at all open because it has been jammed due to the formation of ice. So in order to lower that, what happens? This heating mechanism, some heaters needs to be floor heaters or some this door heaters has to be arranged so that when required it will be just put on that heating and so that that ice will be breaking down. So that ice will be breaking down and that water will be collected as a drain and then these doors can be opened. So for the safety measure, we have to install some heating mechanism around the doors as well as this floor heating purpose. So this is one parameter. Then next one is the pressure. So what happens inside this cold storage means the pressure needs to be sufficient inside this one. So otherwise, when you are giving a cold inside that one, and that is inside environment is getting very much cold means some vacuum formation is a possibility inside that one. When vacuum is forming, what happens? Outside pressure of this atmosphere will be very high compared to the pressure inside this one. Then what happens? This pressure will be acting upon these side walls and because this concrete walls are there, concrete walls cannot be just collapsed easily. But what happens inside this one, we have adopted the false ceiling or some insulating material. This insulating material might have a chance that it will be just collapsed. That insulating or a false ceiling wall will be collapsed due to the buildup of pressure around this cold storage boxes or cold storage cabins, we can say. So in order to do that, we have to provide some proper ventilation. Okay, this type of ventilators we have to provide so that it can be just relieve some of the vacuum inside that one. It can be relieved. So that ventilation needs to be designed properly. Okay, otherwise the heat exchange with the environment will be very high. How much it is required depending on the pressure inside this container as well as pressure outside that container or a pressure outside that cold storage. Depending on that one, we have to consider the aspects. But here our problem as per is we have to design, we have to take consideration of this atmospheric pressure as well as inside this cold storage pressure also. This is our design concern. So in order to have a proper ventilation or have a proper pressure inside and outside this cold storage, we have to provide a proper ventilation. That ventilation needs to be provided according to the refrigeration, which refrigeration environment which needs inside that particular cold storage room. So then next one is the heat exchange. So what happens in the heat exchange means if doors are there, so somebody is coming inside, somebody is going outside. So what happens? The heat exchange will happen between the environment and the inside the cold storage. So in some cases, we can definitely isolate these cabins or cold storage. But in most cases, what happens? Some material is we have to take inside. Some material we have to take outside. So in that scenario, first particular scenario, what happens? The heat exchange mechanism in between cold storage and outside environment exchange will be very high. In order to lower that exchange, if possible, we have to keep this PVC sheets or strips we can call. This PVC strips, when you keep that one, this might have some lower probability to exchange heat with the surroundings. You might have noticed this type of strips or plastic strips in some jewelry shops or people wear ACs, air conditioning using, you might have noticed this type of strips. So these strips are ultimately responsible to not to exchange from heat inside to the outside. So environmental heat exchange will be somewhat lower, not that much, but somewhat lower. If when this PVC sheets are not at all there means the storage, the exchange between outside environment and inside environment will be very huge, and that will be a loss for our refrigeration cycles. So that will offer a low coefficient of performance, and that refrigeration will fail at some point in time because it cannot maintain that accurate temperature which is required inside that cold storage. So because of this, we have to, as a safety consideration, we have to install some PVC sheets or PVC strips inside that one. The next one is the alarm. Whenever there is a extreme conditions like a below temperature or below very much low pressures or very much high pressures or very much high temperatures are there, in order to gauge that temperatures inside that one, there should be some automated alarm setup will be there, both audible as well as visible alarms, so that we some operator who is just looking after this cold storage can have some idea what is going on inside. Otherwise, he could not have any idea. He will just leave that some automated process is going on inside that particular food which we are storing inside is not at all spoiling, or it is having in a safe condition. But what happens ultimately if there is no alarm means that spoilage can happen or something will happen inside. So because of that, we have to keep some safety alarms inside that one. That will comes under the safety considerations. These are various engineering aspects in the cold storage designs. So we need to adopt before designing this one. So ultimately, this will forms a refrigeration cycle. Okay, this will forms a separate task, but the design aspects of inside this cold storage equipments, only this five criteria we have to satisfy. So first one among is thickness. Depending on the thickness, depending on the cold environment which we required inside that one, we have to fix the insulation thickness. So one criteria, then temperature. So this inside this temperature, so that temperature depending on that one, a proper a ventilation or something is required. Then depending on pressure also, a ventilation is also required. Then heat exchange in order to stop the heat exchange between inside and outside, a suitable strips needs to be provided. Then alarm, in order to have some idea about what is going on inside that one, we have to provide some audio or visible alarm, so that something idea we can have. So this is the aspects which we need to consider in designing the cold storage. Okay, is that okay with you? Something.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So then next one is the choice of refrigerant for cold storage. So refrigerant. So this is out of the context, I think, but they are asking as one question for your end examination. So I have just framed this one. So the choice of refrigerant for cold storage, whatever the refrigeration cycle required, that will depend on the particular heat engine or particular refrigeration cycle or a coefficient of performance. Depending on that one, they will design that one. But according to that one, how we can choose that refrigerant? So maximum depending on the coefficient of performance, we will choose our refrigerant. So before designing any refrigeration cycle, the important is the refrigerant which we have to adopt. To type of refrigerants which we can use inside that cold storage or a cold cycle process is four types. One is the ammonia, dichlorofluoromethane, or popularly known with a trade name as a Freon 12, and difluoromonochloromethane, popularly known with this commercial name Freon 22, then chlorofluorocarbons, CFC. So due to the various reasons, environmental reasons like a ozone layer depletion and etc., this to a large extent the use of this chlorofluorocarbons has been stopped. But ammonia is having a very much coefficient of performance, very high coefficient of performance in refrigeration cycle. Because of this, many cold storage will usually adopt this ammonia as their refrigerating agent. So a simultaneous heating and simultaneous condensation. So heat exchange plays a major role in exchanging the in lowering the temperature so as to maintain the coldness inside that cabin or a cold storage. So these are the popular four refrigerants are there, but how to select this refrigerant? What we required inside this cold storage, what we required inside this room, depending on the properties of the particular refrigerant, we have to select. For common properties, I have listed here. These are the common properties. This need not to be same for every four refrigerants, but individual refrigerants will have some individual properties. That is out of context for this one. So the common properties on which based on the refrigeration cycle or a refrigerant will be selected are, so first one is a refrigerant should have low boiling point and low freezing point. So it should have a low boiling point. So it has this low boiling point means some heat supply in order one, and condense that one will be very low, and freezing it should be freeze, then only it can release it can exchange easily the heat between surrounding and to the inside of that cabin. Then next point is it must have low specific heat and high latent heat. So why you should have a low specific heat? The CP value should be very low so that its latent heat or whatever the evaporation. So refrigeration cycle is entirely nothing but evaporation from the liquid phase to the this phase, vapor phase, and vapor phase to the once again to the liquid phase. That entire cycle depends on the heat exchange mechanism between inside and outside. So when it has a high latent heat of vaporization, what happens? The probability of leakage will be very low from inside to outside. So if you see in our refrigerators also, some ammonia or something will be there. So I don't know exactly what that name will be. Some
CFCs, sir.
pot like will be there. So CFCs nowadays for the household purpose not using ammonia, they are using
No,
the
sir.
spot like
Our
structure.
refrigerators, sir.
So backside of that one, some pot like structure will be there. So that
Yes,
will be
sir.
the refrigeration cycle, something we will call. Many times it will fail inside that one, somebody will come to repair. That something, I don't know exact name.
Refrigeration tank.
Tank, no, its name is there, separate name. That will call something is there. A pot like
All,
structure will be there.
all our
That
refrigerators CFCs only, sir.
okay. With the but I heard that they have stopped the use of the CFC because it is
Recently,
responsible for this one. Yes,
recently,
yes.
sir, coming, they are they are using ammonia for recent refrigerators.
Yeah, yeah. Old refrigerators they used to do this one for these
Up
air
to
conditioning also. They
2016,
are not at all using this one.
up to
Uh,
2016, CFCs are only used, sir.
Yes, CFCs are using, but after that, due to ozone layer depletion, so its environmental hazard will be very high. Because of that, they
Yes.
are not stopped this one, discontinued. Large extent they discontinued, but some of them are using. Inside,
That
even the government has
they,
banned in the use of this AC also, air conditioning also, this
they
CFC.
try to replace the refrigerators also, sir, because of this. So many
Yes, yes,
refrigerators are CFCs only, sir.
yes. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're right. Okay, this was the case. Then I don't remember exact that name. If I remember, then I will tell that one. Something will be there that name. So the next point is the pressure required to be maintained in the evaporator and condenser should be low enough to reduce the material cost. So inside that pressure is required. Inside that one it should be low so that the material cost if the high pressures are required inside that one the walls of that particular tank or storage refrigerant storage tank we can say for the time being otherwise when I remember that name I will tell that one. So if that is rare the thickness of that wall should be very high so that will add upon to the cost of that material cost so that well cost will be very high and must be positive to avoid leakage of air into the refrigeration system. So when that thickness of that particular shell will be very high, though it will add upon the cost. It should be enough, some positive enough, so that the leakage of the air from the environment should be low. So that's the criteria. Then the next one is it must have high critical pressure and temperature to avoid large power requirement. If critical pressures and temperatures are very high for particular type of refrigerant, what happens? The power requirement will be very high to heat that one, to condense that one. The condenser, yes. Okay, the condenser, that name is condenser. So the backside of the refrigeration, that condenser will be there. That condenser will be looking upon this evaporation and simultaneous condensation cycle. So that compressors usually that will be failing in our household refrigerators. Then it should have low specific volume to reduce the size of the compressor. If specific volume is very high, then compressor has to be build up a large, very large volume compressors we have to build up. If that specific volume is very low, the compressors nowadays we are coming a small, very small compressors on the back side of our refrigerator. If in the old refrigerators, if you see the compressor size will be very high because they don't know this criteria. The low specific volume is required in order to reduce the size of this compressors. Then depending on the refrigerant also, we have to design that particular size of a compressor. Then it must have high thermal conductivity to reduce the area of heat transfer in evaporator and condenser. So simultaneous evaporation and condenser is taking place with the environment so that heat can be exchanged. So if you have a high thermal conductivity, then heat transfer area must be lower So when heat transfer area is lower, then correspondingly the heat which we are supplying for condensation evaporation will be very low, because Q is directly proportional to area. Q is equal to we say delta T LMTD, something is there. Q is equal to HA delta T LMTD. So depending on that only, the area will be reduced. Obviously, the heat supplied requirement will be there, will be reduced. So it should be non-flammable. So obviously, for everything, it should be non-flammable. If it is flammable, then it will catch a fire, because we are supplying a electrical supply to the compressor itself. So in that compressor, if it is flammable, that liquid will be just burning, and our refrigerator will be a environmental hazard or a fire hazard inside that in our house only. Then non-explosive. If that refrigerant is explosive, then we are also having apart from fire hazard, we are also having the explosive hazards inside our house only. So because of that, it should be non-explosive and non-toxic. Whenever there is some leakage outside this from the compressor, what happens if that refrigerant is that much toxic? What happens? We will be felt unconscious, or some health hazards will be arising. Recently, one incident has been happened in the Nandyal Industries, Nandi group of companies in the Nandyal of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, their refrigeration cycle, ammonia has been leaked out. So there, the people around 30 operators who are there inside their plant, they have felt unconscious, but not that much hazardous for them, but somewhat they felt unconscious. So that's a recent incident which has been happened last 2 months back. I just remember that one. Then non-corrosive. If it is corrosive, then inside that compressor, what happens? It will corrode that pot or a steel pot or whatever the construction material is there. That will be corroding. So it should be non-corrosive. So it should not have any bad effects on the stored material or food when any leaks develops in the system. When any leak happens inside the compressor to our refrigerator inside our household refrigerator, if that refrigerator is having some adverse effect, it is showing some adverse effect on our food, then we can't eat that food. So that's because of this. Somewhat it should not show any ill effect to our food, etc. But the refrigerant obviously somewhat toxic will be there, but these are the ideal properties. But ammonia or something is definitely they are toxic. Then it should give high coefficient of performance. This is a must and should required in working temperature rate. Whatever the temperature range is there, we are choosing to operate our refrigeration cycle. It should have high coefficient of performance, popularly known as COP. It should be very high. This to reduce the running cost of the system. So to reduce the running cost, the COP, high COP will be very much required. Then it must be easily available, and it must also be reasonably cheap. So easily available, cheap for every material which is using in the industrial process or a household purposes. We are obviously looking for the easily available system as well as a cheap system only. So because of this, we want easily available and cheap system. So these are the properties which are required for the refrigerant which we have to choose. It may be ammonia, it may be Freon 12, it may be Freon 22, or it may be a CFC. So depending on this, how the properties are there for each type of refrigerant, the choice of refrigerant, and based on the temperature which is required inside and temperature which is there already on the outside, depending on that one, depending on the properties as well, we will choose what are the refrigerant, what are the refrigeration cycle we require. So these are the popular choices which are there. These are the common properties for any type of ideal refrigerant cycle. So is this okay? Shall I move?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, then the next topic is and irradiation. What does it means, the radiation? So radiation is nothing but the source from which our energy is coming. So that's the radiation. So radiation is the stuff that radioactive material releases into the environment, whether it may be a gamma, x-ray, alpha, beta. Sometimes we can also say UV rays also, ultraviolet rays also. So all these are nothing but radiation. Now the irradiation part is how this radiation is acting on some other material which we are giving that radiation. So that is called as irradiation. So irradiation is what happens to something that get hits with this radiation and refers to the ionization process and damage that occur. Whatever the damage that occurs, whatever the ionization process, nothing but the ability to form a electron pair or ion pair, we can say, that is called as a this ionization process. So whether it may be ionizing radiation or whether it may be this one non-ionizing radiation. So usually we will consider ionizing radiation as a very high energy radiation. Non-ionizing will be very low very low energy radiations. But in the irradiation process, what we will do, this ionizing radiation will be applied so that it will create some damage to this bacteria inside that one. With the non-ionizing radiation, the bacterial spores will be there. Bacterial spores means in bacteria, if it's a normal bacteria, its outer shell layer will be very much thin will be there. So it can be easily destroyed with some energy source. But what happens in the bacterial spores case, that spores will be very heavy one. So that spore will offer a resistant to some energy which is coming from outside. So when that is resistant means that will form some isolation. That radiation cannot kill that bacteria. So this ionizing radiation will have a capability to kill the bacterial spores also. Because of this advantage, ionizing radiation will be used in the irradiation largely. So example of this irradiation process is the use of radiation from radiation, nothing but gamma radiation. Usually this cobalt 60 metal will usually emit the gamma radiations or gamma rays to irradiate the strawberries, extending their shelf life. If you can notice here, if you see, if this is a strawberry, so gamma rays which is coming from this cobalt 60 as a source is just going to hit this strawberry, and whatever the bacteria are there, it will be just coming out and dying there. So that's the overall as a big picture we can show that this is happening. But if you see this one untreated, whatever strawberry is there, we can store it for only 5 days after harvesting. But the treated one with the irradiation, this shelf life will be increased for, we can store that one for 3 weeks also. After harvesting, we can store the strawberries for 3 weeks. That's the major advantage of this food irradiation process. So the difference between radiation and irradiation, I hope you understood this one. Then food irradiation. What is the food irradiation? How does it works? So the food irradiation is nothing but exposing the food to gamma rays. So like this as shown in the figure, exposing this type of food to some gamma radiation, maybe it alpha, beta, gamma. Why we are not using alpha, beta rays? Because the speed of this radiation will be very high, this gamma rays, and at the same time it can penetrate deep inside, and there are various advantages of using this gamma rays is also there. I will show you in the later slide. Then exposing food irradiation is nothing but exposing the food to gamma rays. So first we have to expose that food. The energy from the gamma rays passing through the food is enough to destroy many disease causing bacteria as well as those that cause food to spoil. So this gamma rays has the capability to destroy whatever the bacteria or microorganisms which are there inside that one that are responsible to causing a disease can be died by just passing this gamma rays. So in a controlled manner, we have to pass this gamma rays. How much grays? Usually this gamma rays or this irradiation will be measured in grays, in units as grays. That how much energy which we have to supply in form of grays, we will discuss that one. Then but is not strong enough to change the quality, flavor and texture of the food. This is must and should important, because heating some food will cause the bacteria to just come outside or just buy that one. But what happens in the normal heating sense, the strawberry texture will be destroyed, or its nutrition value will be changed, or its flavor will be changed when we are directly heating that one. But in terms of this food irradiation, what happens, its texture or its flavor or the quality of food cannot be changed. It's the major advantage in the food irradiation process. Then the uniqueness of this irradiation is that DNA damage. It will cause a DNA damage. These are called as strands, DNA strands. So normal DNA of any living organisms will be like this. When this irradiation, when we are passing this one, this will create some damage to the DNA strands. Then obviously that DNA mutation will be happened inside that microorganisms. That then due to this DNA mutation, that microorganisms either can be died in the worst condition, or otherwise its reproducibility will be stopped. So it cannot reproduce, it cannot multiply. Okay, it cannot lay eggs, or it cannot have a babies of that microorganisms. So when we are damaging the DNA structure, obviously in the worst case, in the maximum highly desirable case, the microorganisms will be dying, or otherwise in a least possible case, its reproduction will be stopped there. So that's the advantage in the irradiation process. Then the uniqueness of the irradiation is that DNA, microorganisms and insects have a lot of DNA compared to plant cells, is very sensitive to irradiation. Though that's a benefit. this DNA structure of this one microorganisms are very much sensitive to this irradiation. So irradiation of DNA at approved levels causes base damage, breaking the DNA strands and cross-linking. These strands will be broken, and due to these strands only they are cross-linked with each other. When these strands are broken, there is no cross-linking. There is a long-term mutation in the DNA process. Then all this results in the loss of organisms' ability to reproduce. It cannot reproduce. It cannot multiply themselves. Then we have to repair the DNA. Then only that multiplication will be possible. So this is the overall process which is going to happen in the irradiation process. By the DNA damage, the process has to be acted in order to lower the possibility of food spoilage or food destruction. So now we can define what is our food irradiation. Food irradiation is nothing but a process by which food is exposed to the controlled source of ionizing radiation to prolong shelf life. So shelf life is important. Then also to improve microbiological safety. So microbiological safety means when we are consuming some microorganisms through our food, via our food, what happens? We are inviting the disease inside us. So in order to lower the chances of disease, so microbiological safety is also important. That will be provided by this food irradiation, and or reduce the use of chemical fumigants and additives. Nowadays, if you see many people due to the coronavirus, they are just operating these tunnels. Okay, that fumigant tunnels. We can do the spray tunnels. That tunnels they are operating. That is nothing but chemicals only, which are falling on us. So that chemicals they are killing corona or not, but they are having some adverse effect on our skin or adverse effect on our hair. Something they are creating, which we don't know. After seeing them for a long time only, we can say some adverse effect they are showing, but people are using that one. So using this irradiation mechanism, we can lower the usage of this chemical fumigants and as well as additives. Many preservating additives are using nowadays. Even for this noodles also, we are using many chemical preservatives. So that chemical preservatives will definitely alter, will definitely have some chemical reaction with the natural wheat or natural whatever the pulses are there. So that chemical additives, that adverse effect of those chemical additives can be lowered down by using this irradiation procedure. So the process by which food is exposed to control source of ionizing radiation to prolong shelf life, improve microbiological safety, and or reduce the use of chemical fumigants and additives is nothing but food irradiation. The definition of this food irradiation. So the advantage here for the why we are using only gamma rays. So if you see this alpha rays, that can only penetrate up to the paper. It cannot penetrate to the paper also. A paper can stop this alpha ray. But beta rays, if you see, it will be penetrating until the outside layer of this aluminum foil. But gamma rays will have a deep penetration until the some lead block is there. There only it will stop. So otherwise it can penetrate until this aluminum foil also. So in the canning process, if you see the aluminum foiling or some aluminum cannings will be there, Coca-Cola, these tins will be coming. So how they are just irradiating, because this gamma rays can have a capability to pass inside that one also. So overall, when they are vacuum packing that one, they are just applying as one step of this gamma ray irradiation also in order to lower the chances of spoiling for the long term storage. So this is the advantage of this gamma rays, and the comparison also there for these three rays, alpha, beta, gamma. Then the principles of food radiation, how they are acting upon. Actually, we have discussed this one because of DNA strand damage only. That strands are damaging, because of that only the DNA damage, permanent damage is occurring. Then they are their ability to reproduce is just getting damaged, as well as some death they are leading. So in the large scale, how it is happening? So block is there in these shelves. Okay, these are the blocks. Inside this there will be shelves. This food will be carrying and keeping inside these shelves, and this shell, when they are closed, this one, they are just inserting inside this UV irradiation process box. Then from this box, the irradiation from the cobalt 60, the whatever the irradiation which is coming, alpha gamma radiation which is coming due to this cobalt 60 source, it is just acting upon this one. So it will, gamma rays will have a large penetration capability. So these are penetrating inside this one, and once again in the final state, that blocks which the food is there, it will be removing, and this food is getting packed and sent to the package state. So how this overall process is taking place? So when ionizing radiation, since gamma rays are the ionizing radiation, so they have a capability of producing the ionic pair, whether it may be positive or whether it may be a negative charge. So depending on the electron losing or electron gaining, that will produce some positive or negative ions. But ionization is a process which is going to happen here. When ionizing radiation passes through the food, some energy is absorbed by some chemical bonds. So irrespective of what type of chemical bond it is taking place, some ionization process is taking place. That ionization process will have a capability of producing some ions or some free radicals. Some bond rupture and produce free radicals. These free radicals, which are highly reactive and unstable, they instantaneously join with the neighboring compounds, and the results of are called radiolysis compounds. So they are joining with the adjoining other microorganisms or adjoining pair of ions. Then what happens if fast reaction is taking place? So this process can also be happen using the thermal treatment or heating treatment. But what happens in the normal heat treatment? So the texture, nutrition value or some quality of the food will be destroyed. So that type of compounds is called as thermolytic compounds. But in the irradiation process, what happens? The main feature, main wonderful feature is their texture, their shape or their quality, their nutrition value will be same as that of the fresh one. So say that's the advantage, that's the beauty of this irradiation. That's the statement they are saying in this one. So the if you see the unsterilized apples are there, when some gamma source is just applied on this one, so finally what happens? The sterilized products will be coming. So that will have a shape, size, or some texture, or quality, or nutrition value. Everything with a minute change only. Everything will be the same one. So the gamma rays, why we are using this one? The charge, the comparison table you can see here. The speed, mainly the speed will be very high. The speed of light category, so very high in the gamma rays, and at the same time, ionizing effect will not be a very much strong. If that ionizing effect is very strong, what happens? That will destroy the actual food also. Along with the microorganisms, it will destroy the this food also. So because of this, it will have a very weak ionization. But ionization needs to be present, but very weak ionization has to be present. Because of this advantage, we are taking this gamma rays. Okay, there are only these two parameters. Depending on that one, the gamma rays has been selected. One is the speed, and next one is the ionizing effect. So this is the principle which is going to happen inside the irradiation process. So how to measure this irradiation process? So the radiation which is going inside, whether it may be any number of energy, which is n number of energy it is going, or infinite number of energy it is going, whether it is safe or not, how can we categorize that one? So safety, depending on safety only, we can consume that irradiated food. So for defining that safety, this irradiation process has to be measured with certain units. So what are those units? That unit is nothing but grays. So usually this gamma rays, the absorptions of this irradiation process will be measured in terms of grays. So what is this grays? So one gray is nothing but 1 joule of absorbed energy per kg of product. So how much energy which is absorbing per kg of each product, that will be measured in terms of units of gray. So most treatment levels are in the order of 1 to 10 kilograys. So this kilograys 1 to 10 is also considered as a safe. Okay, apart from this 10 grays also, more than this 10 grays also, people are applying, but other categories of products they are applying. For our normal consumption, for our normal food consumption, up to 10 grays are safe according to the FSSAI. So that is safe according to that organization, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India organization. That 10 grays up to 10 kilograys, this irradiated products are very much safe. That will be considered. This irradiation process will have a many advantages, right in the field of sterilization, also medical equipment sterilization, or whatever the syringes, whatever the knives or needles, something they are using by the doctors, everything has to be sterilized because it's not a one time use. So in the another use, in another operation, they have to sterilize that one, then they can obviously use that one in the next operation. So that has the advantage. Then in the spices, so irradiation process will also have a advantage of destroying these chemical additives, whatever the chemical additives they are adding by some retailer or by some manufacturer. So that that chemicals will have some adverse effect, means that chemicals can also be destroyed using the irradiation process, that is known as hygienization. So hygienization will be carried out, some insect disinfectant, some long-term storage of pulses will have some insects inside that one. That insects can also be removed using this irradiation process, and usually to increase the shelf life of any type of fish or fresh meat or some vegetables or some sprout forming this one like onions or some potatoes, in order to inhibit the sprout forming and quarantine or increase the shelf life of the fruits and this meat products. So this irradiation can be used. So following advantages are there using that irradiation process. Then what are the applications of this irradiation process? So the long-term applications are the radiation pasteurization or sanitary treatment. Oh, radiation pasteurization means nothing but heating. So energy we are supplying the same irradiation process only. So sanitary treatment, nowadays sanitary treatment is very much required criteria. Then radiation sterilization in the medical equipment sterilization. Okay, that radiation sterilization can be used. Then replacing the chemical figments of the food sprout inhibition. So whatever the chemicals which are already added as additives can also be removed, and at the same time it can inhibit the sprout forming. According to research, this sprout forming vegetables are there. Consuming this sprout forming vegetables after sprout formation is hazardous, is very much hazardous according to the research which has been just published in this fruit processing journal. So the sprout formation is very much not at all required. So in order to inhibit, or in order to inhibit for the long time, this irradiation is inhibit the sprout forming. So this irradiation can also be used. One of the application of this irradiation is to inhibit the sprout formation in some vegetables. Then enhancing the food quality. So food quality, obviously when we are removing the insects inside that one, when we are removing the microorganisms, the quality will be increased. Then eliminating certain parasite hazards in food. So some parasite hazards will be there like this one, so that will be removed. So insects or some parasites or microorganisms will be removed. That's the advantage and applications of this food irradiation. Then applications. So applications can be divided into three levels. One is low dose level, medium dose level, and high dose level. So the low dose level we can use up to 1 kilogram. So 10 raised to 1 kilogram. This is considered as a low dose level. So these low dose levels will be applied for the inhibition of the sprouts. So okay, this sprouts inhibition of potatoes, onions, garlic, root ginger, or yam we can use to lower this sprout forming ability of these fruits or vegetables. Then insect disinfectant and parasite disinfection, cereals and pulses, fresh fruits, fresh and dried fruits, dried fish and meat, fish, pork, etc. So insects, if there are some insects on the food, so that will be just going on because we are applying the irradiation. That's the advantage application at the low gray levels or low dose levels. Then delay of physical process, physiological processes or ripening. So this ripening of this fruit can be lowered. The shelf life can be increased using this irradiation process for the both fresh fruits as well as the vegetables also. So this low levels processing is sometimes called as a radurization. So this is called radurization. This low levels, low dose levels, 10 gray to 1 kilogram process which is taking place due to irradiation is called as a radurization. Then the next application is medium dose level. So this medium dose level is compared in between 1 to 10 kilograms. So this is also very much safe according to FSSAI. Up to 10 grams, this is very much safe. We can use that products for our consumption. So this medium dose levels are to remove the extension of shelf life. Then up to 1 to 3 kilograms we can use for the fresh fish, strawberries, mushrooms. We can use this dose level. Then elimination of spoiled and pathogenic microorganisms. Already spoiled food is there. Already spoiled food can be, these microorganisms can be destroyed using this medium dose levels also. Then improving technological properties of food. Grapes, example, grapes, increasing juice yield, dehydrated vegetables. So whatever the food already contaminated, we can remove that one. So we can just convert that into some stable compounds or stable dehydrated vegetable products. So this process in the medium dose level is sometimes called as this radicidation. So that is radiation, the low levels, and medium levels is radicidation. We can call this one. This will have a application in order to already destroyed food can be just make them with a disinfectant nature. Then next one comes to the high dose level. So this dose level is called as a radipriorization. So this radipriorization will have many industrial application. So industrial sterilization in combination with mild heat. So 30 to 50 kilograms will be used here for the meat, poultry, seafood, prepared food, sterilized hospital diets, and everything. This dose levels can be used with some adverse effects will be there, but not that much maybe. Because of this is also one process exists for some of the foods, they can use this one. Then decontamination of certain food additives. So food additives already which are added in the spices or some enzyme preparation or some natural gums which are there, that additives can also be decontaminated, that additives can also be removed using this level of high doses of irradiation. So this process is analogous to thermal canning in achieving shelf stability, long-term storage without refrigeration, and is sometimes called radioprioritization. So this radioprioritization products is obviously can be used without any refrigeration for the long period of time. The packaging which are saying that no refrigeration is required might have been prepared using this technique, using this high lows level techniques only, but they will have some effect, they will have some adverse effects on the consumption, whoever are consuming that one. So these are the applications up to this which are categorized into high level, low level, medium level, and high level doses. Then benefits. What are the benefits of this food irradiation? So benefits we can just whatever the process which we are just now discussing, from that one we can list out these benefits. So disease causing germs are reduced or eliminated completely. Then nutrition value of the food is preserved. The same what is there in the fresh product will be preserved, and decreases the incidence of foodborne diseases. So food poisoning and everything can be decreased using this type of irradiation process. That's the benefit. And reduced spoilage in global food supply. So due to the spoilage of the food only, around 30 to 40% of the food is getting wasted throughout the world. 30 to 40% food means it will add a much of the GDP. It is a crores and crores amount of rupees of food that is. So we can lower the spoilage of the food at the global level also. Then increased level of quality assurance. We can assure the quality. You can up to the 10 grades. FSSAI is itself certifying that that food is safe for consumption. So that's the benefit of the food irradiation process. Then what are the advantages? For the benefit, I am just listing out for the benefit of the exam. So what are these advantages? So what is versatile? So what does that mean? This process is flexible. Versatile does mean that this is flexible, very flexible process. It can be applied for n number of products. Many products it can be applied, right from the medical equipments, fumigant, replacement of fumigants, or disinfectant of already spoiled food. We can use that one. So it is versatile process. Then highly effective and efficient. So compared to other processes, this is somewhat highly efficient. Then a cold process. So not at all heating, that is not heating. Because of this only, there is advantage of no texture change of the original food. Then no problem of transportation. So transportation, obviously, see that only the trolley is just moving. Okay, so there is no problem in packing and everything. So obviously, after packing also we can just fumigate, apply some irradiation on that one. So there is no problem of adverse transportations. Then solid raw food can be treated. So any type of food can be solid raw food which are there, which can be treated like a meat. We can treat pork or some chicken, everything we can treat. Then treatment does not involve with chemicals and chemical residues. There is no usage of any additives or chemicals inside that one. There is no point of formation of some chemical residues inside that one. So the process is relatively easy to control. So just we have to control the radiation source. With that one we can control everything. Then food can be instantly distributed after treatment. So that food we can instantly can be just sent to the end user or a customer or a consumer. That's the advantage of this process. There is no chemical residues or something. The safety, whether how safe this food, irradiated food. So food is not radioactive energies which is used in this irradiation process. So irradiation process, whatever the radiation we are using, they are not at all making that food as a radioactive material. So somewhat we can say it is safe. But according to FSSAI, so below 10, the food which is treated up to this 10 kilograms is no, there is no production of any toxicological or microbiological or nutritional problems has been observed according to the research. So foods up to 10 kilograms is very much safe, we can say. So this food which are manufactured, which are just treated with this food irradiation is very much safe. We can define with this one. So World Food Safety Day has been celebrated every year on June 7th. Can remember this one. So this one is food irradiation. If you have any doubt, you can just ask me. So otherwise, I will continue.
For raw vegetables and fruits, where do they do food irradiation, sir?
Raw vegetables and fruits, where do they dig?
Where do they do irradiation process?
Where do they do means in industry you are asking, or some process you are asking?
Industry, sir, because raw vegetables, when can they do? If government buys those raw vegetables, will they do?
Yeah. This irradiation they are not at all applying now. Whatever
Yes,
we are
sir.
buying now in our area, it is
Yes, sir.
directly coming from the farmers or some middle person.
Yes, sir.
But in the big food processing industry, I am saying with that one, because when big food industry like this Patanjali or some Nestle products, whatever are there,
Yes,
they
sir.
are procuring directly from the farmer. What they will do immediately after procurement, they will not at all use that one directly. They will store for some time. So in the season itself, if the paddy season, okay, only 6 months will be the paddy season. So other
Yes,
6 months is a dry season, we can say. So what happens? How can we store that paddy without any disinfectant? We have to store in the olden days. They are using some silos, a big silos. They
yes,
are
sir.
using store them for the long time without any effect from this rat and everything. Like this, big industries will store in some region. During storage, some damage might happen, or when they are just going to process that food, the some damage already happened, or to prevent that damage, big industry will be applying this food irradiation. In our region there is no like that industry, only this industries which are there, like Haldiram's products, okay, they will
Yes, sir.
procure this cereals and everything. So the cereals which they are procuring on this date, in the next date they are not using immediately, they are not using, they will store for some time. During storage they will apply this one immediately, or while manufacturing in the first stage as a primary treatment, they will use this one. So
Yes,
we
sir.
are not at all using this irradiation.
Yes, sir.
There is a possibility we can use this one irradiation, but when you say somebody outside of this educated person, so this is a irradiated food, they will definitely fear. So
Yes,
nowadays
sir.
many people are fearing to use this UV radiation also. UV chambers they are coming out, so that UV chamber is nothing but non-ionizing radiation, that is. So I don't know how they can kill this virus, coronavirus, I don't know, but this they
Yes,
are
sir.
not at all ionizing also. But out of context, that one, the people, when you are saying outside persons that this is irradiated food means, they will not, they will hesitate to consume. When
Yes,
you
sir.
just create a awareness only, they are going to consume. But in the big industrial processes, this is usually they will apply this one in order to lower increase their shelf life, or in order to lower the chances of food poisoning or food contamination, they will apply this process. That's the
Yes, sir.
advantage. Yeah. Okay, this is anybody is having any doubt? Time is also only 5 minutes, so that we can start the next one. Just glimpses I will provide. Anybody else having doubt? Pavani?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, then I will just provide a glimpse of this pasteurization process. So this pasteurization process, they are not at all asking in your question paper. Only a short answer, short questions I have seen many times, but it is there in your syllabus. Okay, for the long answer also, it is there in the separate line in your syllabus book. So I just thought of just discussing the overall this pasteurization process. So I framed these slides. So what is this pasteurization process? So this process is nothing but a heating process, okay, to destroy the microorganisms which are causing the spoilage of the food, or to increase the shelf life. Okay, same pasteurization or irradiation we can take. The pasteurization here, the direct heat which we are applying here. So how much heat which we have to apply there, depending on the particular process, as well as depending on the particular bacteria or the spore. Okay, as I said, the bacterial spores are there. They are not at all they are very reluctant, they are not at all easily destroyed. So to destroy that one, we have to apply some adverse treatment. So that adverse treatment will be some pasteurization process. Usually if you see in our household daily which we are drinking the milk nowadays, which is a pasteurized milk. So this pasteurized milk, what they will do, whether they will do high temperature short time pasteurization, or high temperature short time, or a high temperature long time pasteurization, or a ultra high temperature pasteurization. Like this, there are many categories of pasteurizations out there. So depending on what type of bacteria which is present inside that one, in order to inactivate that microorganisms, or in order to spoil that, in order to kill that microorganisms, the pasteurization process will be applied. So depending on that only, the temperature range and the time period of that pasteurization process will be chosen. Okay, depending on the microorganisms and whatever the end product which is required. For example, like a yogurt formation, so high temperature, ultra high temperature can be applied. But in the, what happens in the ultra high temperature, maximum temperature, high temperature, when you go, what happens to that one, there is a chance of that we say this one, protein modification inside this one. There, whatever the natural proteins which are there inside this milk, it also be just spoiling out that protein also, together with this destruction of these microorganisms. Because of this, we are using high temperature short time pasteurization for our household milk purpose. But to prepare the yogurt in the industrial scale, they will use ultra high temperature, maximum high temperature. They will go to that one, because they required some modification of proteins also. Because of that advantage, they will prepare that one. So how does this pasteurization process has been developed? So one French scientist is there, who is the Louis Pasteur. So whose research in 1880s has been demonstrated that thermal processing of any substance which will lead to killing of these microorganisms which are there unwantedly in our products. He has just conducted an experiment on the wine product. But nowadays, this pasteurization process is synonymous to the dairy products. So pasteurization means we just can sense that it is a dairy product nowadays. It has happened like that. But in the early days, he has just conducted research on the wine only. So after his name, this French scientist name only, this pasteurization process has been come into existence. So today, this pasteurization process is very much synonymous to the product industry, this food processing, or this dairy product industry. So this is a heating of any type of product unto the temperature which is set down to kill that particular bacteria or bacterial spores, is called this pasteurization process. So this is the overall scenario. In the next class, we will continue this overall process. There is very a big chapter this is. We can discuss different types of pasteurization or milk pasteurization method. A big method is there. You just don't have to remember all these things. Just a brief glimpses you can remember and write on your own in the examination. So these are the slides which are there. The significance. Then next one, freeze drying. We are going to see advantages of freeze drying and food additives. I will just prepare this one. So the next part after food additives will be your part B. So this is very big unit. Until now there are 60 slides. So it will come around 72 or 78 slides maybe. Okay, if you find any difficulty in understanding, just ask me immediately, so that we don't have any problem in the later stage.
Okay, sir.